How's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Saturday night update. It is the Earthmaster here. March 30th, 2024. It is about 11:56 p.m. Kind of late. I know it's almost midnight out here along the West Coast, but better late than never for an update. The latest activity looks like a 3.3 across the area north of the Himalayas right here. We'll get to the rest of earthquake activity here in a minute. A lot of folks wondering what's going on here with the eclipse. What am I going to see? Am I going to see anything in terms of the eclipse potential? So this is the latest model run here from the Pivotal Weather site, the GFS model. Each run is becoming more and more consistent with some type of subtropical jet bringing in quite a bit of moisture, quite a bit of cloud cover here to the area of Texas and across the totality line, which is right here in the red line. This is for roughly about the time frame 15Z of when we expect the eclipse to be going on and the totality time frame. Just after this, it looks like 18Z continues to show further cloud cover. So it looks like, at least right now, things are going to be pretty well blocked out here across the Texas area, Arkansas area as well. There may be some regions up northeast here that may see some clearing. The best bet may be into Ohio, maybe into New York State up here as well. So we'll have to watch that. But most models are fairly consistent with showing a decent amount of cloud cover. So here is the windy map. Now this goes up to about, this is going to be Monday the 8th here. Now, I'm going to go 11 a.m. here, my time, because that will put it at 1 p.m. Central Time out here. And you can see a lot of cloud cover coming in, a lot of moisture coming in. And this is just the ECMWF model. The GFS model shows a lot of cloud cover as well. But this is more discrete in terms of potentially showing some breaks in the clouds. There may be some areas out here in Texas where the clouds... It may be a little visibility in terms of seeing the eclipse, but the majority of the models are showing general cloud cover out here. Look at Ohio, fairly clear, as we've seen on the other model as well. It's just one of those things here. You got to be pretty accurate in terms of where you're going to set up to view the total eclipse here on the April 8th time period. Right now, Ohio looks good. Even down into Mexico, this is all covered up. And it's an unfortunate event here, but this is getting into springtime. The moisture content, the subtropical jet, a lot of interaction going on here that can create some severe weather out here this time of year. And that's what we got coming up here around the April 8th time period. We'll continue to come back and check on it, but right now the weather models are fairly consistent here with a decent subtropical jet flowing in here. A lot of moisture coming up from the Gulf. If we look at the numerical models in terms of moisture content, let's bring this up to the April 8th time period, roughly about there. You can see a lot of moisture coming up here. So this is all going to be inundated with cloud cover, and that's unfortunate. But again, over around Ohio, maybe things might be clear. We're going to pinpoint the exact location there that you may be able to see the eclipse as we get a little bit closer. But each model run showing more and more moisture out here. And that's, unfortunately, that's what Mother Nature has planned out here. So we'll check back on that a little bit later. All right, earthquake activity. What's going on out here, folks? Anything major going on as far as movement goes? Did see a 4.5 out here around the Banda Sea, one of the latest quakes. Couple earthquakes out here around the Tonga region. We're getting some shallow earthquake activity upstream here with some deeper movement here across the plate boundary. That 4.5 over here is 110 kilometers deep over here across this area of the subduction zone. Little trough right here. You can kind of see the deepness in the Weber Basin area. So we'll continue to watch this area, getting a lot of bouncing back and forth here between the areas. Let me see what we got here for the last 7 days. We filled in slightly here across the Solomon Islands with a 4.9 and a 5.0 in the Vanuatu area, but it's still lacking some decent movement here for the last 7 days, probably the last 10 days or so. This area roughly about here northward to right about here has been awfully quiet. There's not a whole lot of movement here. So I expect this to fill in here. It just makes sense to fill in terms of the plate tectonic movement out here with all this bouncing back and forth activity in between it. It's kind of closing in closer and closer, but it's still got this little gap right here between Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands area. We'll continue to watch that for some potential movement here. Down in New Zealand, it does look like they're seeing a 3.1 coming in right now. Still seeing some activity. Look at that. Quite a bit of deeper activity here underneath the North Island area. Let's go check out the GeoNet servers here real quick and see what's going on this Saturday night. All right, we need to check out all the magnitudes here. 2.9 about 12 minutes ago. 2.0 38 minutes ago. There's a fairly deep earthquake, 4.3 along the southern end of the Kermadec Trench, 100 kilometers deep. I'm looking for more discrete activity underneath the North Island area. And I seen it there. Look at that, 123 for a 2.2, well underneath the North Island area. There's another deep earthquake along the Kermadec Trench, 4.9, 436 kilometers deep. Let's see here, 151 kilometers underneath this area. And that's been fairly consistent. We've seen a lot of deep activity out here across the North Island area recently, and it's just making me wonder if there's something coming upstream as far as any larger scale potential out here across the surface areas. Looking at the seismograph stations here does show some of that activity scattered out and about. Yeah, it looks like there's a handful of earthquake activity out here across the North and South Island area. No major swarms, but still we'll continue to watch that area of New Zealand. West Coast activity out here. We did see some movement down in the Southern California area with a 3.1 earthquake. This was almost immediately following my update this morning in the San Bernardino area. 17 kilometers deep on the northern edge of the San Jacinto fault zone. Aside from that, really not a whole lot, but I think a few folks did feel this earthquake out here around the area of Southern California. They're mainly reporting some light to weak shaking here. Nothing major going on, but still a few folks reporting that earthquake. The rest of Southern California here, very minimal. Got a 1.0 coming in the last hour. One lonesome earthquake over here at the very extreme southern end of the plate boundary. That's the San Andreas Fault, 1.6. Up north here, typical movement here across the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. Nothing going on up here across the Pacific Northwest for now. Let's see what we got for the tremor activity. We're looking at zip, zero, nada. Nothing going on here in terms of the tremor. That continues the decline in the tremor activity out here across the Cascadia subduction zone. What it means? Well, I guess maybe we'll find out here soon. Been looking at this lack of tremor here, almost coming up on, well, about a year and a half of very minimal tremor conditions compared to years past here. It's a little unusual because we've seen regular intervals here of large tremor, and something's going on, obviously. We'll continue to watch that, though. The Yellowstone National Park, nothing showing up here, but, you know, let's just double check. I want to verify. Doesn't look like there's too much activity out there. I believe this earthquake here is going to be that 5.8 up along the Aleutian Trench earlier this morning. But as far as any localized seismic activity across Yellowstone, it's very minimal. Maybe a couple spikes here, but those are extremely small earthquakes out there. The rest of the country, fairly quiet. There's that one earthquake there in Ohio earlier this morning. Since then, we've seen a small amount of earthquake activity here across the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains area. I've never been through there. I'm a nature guy, so I do want to get out here one of these days and experience the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountains area. I would love to take a cruise out there. Maybe rent me a sports car to be able to sightsee out there across those mountains. Maybe I'll ride a motorcycle out there. I think that'd be kind of fun as well, going through those hills. One day I'll get out there. All right, far as any further movement out here across the southeastern Pacific, there's a 4.9 that came in off the Costa Rica area here. Now, remember earlier this morning I was talking about how we should expect further activity out here following the divergent zones here across the southeastern Pacific Rise area. Well, Central East Pacific Rise is what they call it. This is a divergent zone separation of the seafloor, and that normally adds strain out here across the Nazca Plate and the Cocos Plate here, the eastern section. And it does look like things have kind of stirred up out here lately following that event. Again, the Costa Rica activity and a little bit further movement down south here. I've seen some 2s and 3s stirring up there in that area. There's a newer quake there off the coast, or within the Peru area, a very shallow earthquake, 4.1. That's going to be this quake. So we have seen some adjustment. Let's see here. USGS is showing that pretty early this morning. When was this 4.1? I'm just kind of curious. So yeah, this is a recent 4.1. This 4.1 that they're showing over here is an earthquake from almost 24 hours ago. So it does look like there's a newer quake here on the Earthquake 3D globe that's not being reported on the USGS map. So there's definitely some current activity taking place here, adjacent from all this divergent activity out there in the central mid-Atlantic or central East Pacific Rise. Not the Atlantic. The Atlantic right now, fairly quiet. Not a whole lot going on out here. Iceland activity is checked out real quick. Live from Iceland. I think it's still going. Let's see. There's the big one. There's the big crater out there still fountaining with lava, just free-flowing magma from the areas below up to the surface. There's not a whole lot of huge fountaining going on because of the pressurization that's lacked. It's declined a lot from the recent days. But we're still seeing, obviously, free-flow magma here at the surface levels. I'm not for sure what's going on with the crater or with the camera. It could be wind. It does look quite windy out there. Let's check out a broader view and see if these other areas are active. It doesn't look like these other two crater... Well, no, I take that back. See that? Seen some fountaining going on here across this area. So it still looks quite active out here across this area of Iceland. Really no new updates in terms of the update activity from the Icelandic Met Office. This was put out a few days ago. Hopefully tomorrow or Monday they'll put out a new update. But let's check out the earthquake activity out here across Iceland in general. Fairly active in terms of the rift boundaries out here. Really not a whole lot going on. No major unusual activity, but still quite active. So this movement, going on there across the area northeast of Grindavik here for 2 weeks now. This could go on and on as long as there's a further supply of magma from the deeper areas below. And it makes sense, right? Unless something blocks down there, we could expect this to go on and on and on, or maybe even intensify. All right, there's the Alaska quake. Well, that's not really Alaska. It's the Aleutian Trench way out here around the Aleutian Islands, I guess. Really no further movement out here following that deeper quake this morning. That was fairly deep up here across the subduction zone of the Aleutian Islands, 116 kilometers deep. The Big Island of Hawaii, fairly quiet. Aside from some typical movement out here, no major changes there across the volcanoes. Out across the area of the Middle East, one earthquake out here around the Pakistan area, 4.0, and the latest, a 5-pointer coming in to the Tajikistan. I'm not for sure which one it is, so I just pronounced them both earlier today. Also a 4.7 earthquake coming in early this morning out here outside the Turkey area in the Georgia region. Now, let's go over here to the Earthquake 3D globe. and take a look at the Mediterranean area where it looks fairly quiet right now. Normally there's areas at least seeing some 2s and 3s out here. It's very quiet, but we'll continue to watch that area. As far as any major heightened areas that we should be on guard for, obviously across the Middle America Trench southward into the South America region. That makes sense following the divergent activity this morning there in the Pacific Ocean. All right, space weather activity. Let's go check that out here real quick and see what we have going on. Don't want to make this an extensively long update, but we did see a pretty decent X flare. It did. Did it make it into the X flare category? Pretty darn close. Did they officially call it an X flare? Let's see here. Oh, let me see here. Let me go over here and double check. That's in very close to the X flare. M9.3. That is from a departing sunspot here. Let's see if they have it in the movie. From the Solar Dynamic Observatory. We're going to put this into play here and see what we got. It's going to be this region right here. Very active area. Not for sure why it's buffering like that. It shouldn't. But, yeah, it definitely shouldn't. We'll go right about here and see what we got. These guys having issues or what? What's going on here? There it is. Look at that. You guys see that right at the end. A beautiful, almost near X flare coming in there from that far side sunspot. It almost looks like it did produce a CME. Notice this long, drawn out activity here, the long thickness. Yeah, near X flare, so an M9.4. I believe it did produce a CME, just looking at that. But not Earth directed. Definitely not Earth directed because that is way off on the southwestern limb. So we shouldn't see any effects from that. Let's see here if this one's going to show the CME activity. This one looks a little bit better. So watch out here along the southwestern limb. See if we get there's an older one there from the 29th. Pretty decent CME directed away from Earth, but we're looking more towards the 31st, 30th time frame here as we get to the end. Should be a pretty dynamic one. Right. Oh, maybe it's not up there yet. One would think that it would be up there already, but I guess not. All right. So even if that thing did produce a CME, it's off on position here, facing away from the Earth. Not going to be geo-effective. We're left with a whole lot of coronal holes there. They're shooting out high-speed solar wind, but I really don't expect anything major from any of these the coronal holes here because they're not all that impressive. A look at the magnetogram image here of 3615, which is no longer visible. The threat level has diminished here in terms of our Earth-facing side here of the sun, and we're left with a lot of nothingness. Look at this. Let me show you guys the visible disk out here. That is very absent of sunspot activity. Goodness. We have 3624 here, but yeah. I don't think I even want to chat about that because there's really nothing to chat about. A look at the far side sun here. Let's see what we got. Here's that little sunspot that I don't want to talk about because it's just so small. Back behind that, out on the eastern limb, this sunspot here looks like it's diminishing. It doesn't look like anything of worthy value. Now back behind that, there's a couple large sunspots here that we're kind of keeping an eye on. Let me check out the latest image here. As you can see on the, let's go here to the end. There we go. So here is the Earth-facing side, right? This looks like it's a couple days old. Let me go to the end here. I didn't mean to do that. I want to check out right about here. 329. That's fairly recent, but yeah, there we go. So here's our departing large sunspot that's produced the recent M flare activity. It's much further out there along the western limb. Here's the far side. Now this area is coming back around the bend, and it will be popping off here on the eastern limb of the sun here very soon. That it looks like a decent sunspot. Very large, couple, actually two distinct separate sunspots here that we're going to have to watch. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. It'll probably show up here in a few days. I'm not really seeing any major signs of it out there on the eastern limb, but right now we'll expect quiet conditions out here in terms of solar flare potential. It has dropped down now that the large sunspot has dropped off the western limb out there. 15% chance for an X flare, M flare at 65, C flare around 99% chance or so. And no major roars in the forecast, unfortunately. Hopefully we can get that to change. All right, Storm Prediction Center. What's going on for some severe weather? Now, things are looking a little crazy out there around Monday out in the southern plains and potential areas out in the Midwest as well. For a large area of some severe weather potential, we're talking about a decent chance for tornado probability as well. See this hatched area of 10%? That's the greatest area of concern in terms of large-scale tornado outbreaks. We're talking about Springfield, Missouri, Carbondale, Illinois, anywhere actually if you're out here across the green area and other areas included. Just be weather aware for the potential of tornadoes. Wind damage and some hail threats out here as well, mainly back here across Oklahoma and areas into the Missouri area. So just a heads up, definitely keep an eye on that if you're out there in those regions. There's a low pressure system out here off the California coast that's going to stir up that severe weather as we get into early next week, Monday into Tuesday. After that, got another storm system out here across the west coast. Not a big rain maker, but we'll be bringing some precipitation back out there. That's going to be somewhat of the weather maker as we head into the April 8th time period. Look at that. Right about here is Monday night at around 6. Now, the eclipse time, roughly in between 12Z and 18Z. There's already a lot of cloud cover in place, moisture building up out here. And, you know, for a more accurate detail, next Friday coming up here, or this Friday coming up, will be, I think, a definite forecast in many people's minds if they're going to go out and cover this eclipse or not. Because, you know, a lot of people spend so much money years in advance. And I thought about it here a year or so ago, setting up motel rooms and whatnot for this date. But even back then, they were charging $600-700 a night for like a Motel 6. So, yeah, I decided that I'm going to just drive out here for the eclipse and view it from Texas. But as of right now, with all this cloud cover and precipitation chances, I'm leaning more towards that I'm not going to drive out there and cover this. I would love to. My last experience was up in Madras, Oregon for the 2017 total eclipse, and it was an experience I will never, ever forget. But is it worth it to go out there and view cloud cover? You won't be able to see anything. I mean, it might be cool for the folks out there living out there to see 4 minutes of darkness in the middle of the day, but you're not going to see stars. You're not going to get any photograph opportunities. So, again, this coming Friday, check back. It will be a more accurate, more set-in-stone type of forecast for cloud cover, but it's all leaning towards a lot of cloud cover out here, unfortunately, folks. All right, what else we got? Seismograph stations are about as calm as can be. Look at that. Nothing, absolutely nothing showing up out here across the world in terms of earthquake activity. So we'll see how the night goes, right? Hope everyone has a good night. Please stay safe out there. And I think that's about all I got out here, folks. There's really nothing else major going on. If we look at the rain accumulation out here over the next 10 days or so, these are areas that are expecting some decent rain. Got California, the West Coast, Southern California, Texas area. It looks like an active spring here, folks. I think we're going to be looking at, the severe weather really ramping up out here as we head into April. Hurricane season, who knows? We'll have to see what that brings, as we are expecting warmer temperatures out here across the Atlantic, and I'm sure the Gulf as well. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good morning wherever you're at. I'm going to go to sleep, get some shut-eye here, and we'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on. It is Sunday right now, but after a few hours of sleep, we'll catch you back out here for the Sunday morning update. Take care, folks.